You lock your front door,
Right.
set the alarm, maybe even got a guard dog.
Sure.
Feeling pretty secure, right?
Yeah.
But what if someone found a secret way in, bypassing all your security?
Not good.
That's what we're diving into today.
Okay.
How hackers can slip past the digital guard dogs of the internet.
Interesting.
Web application firewalls, or WAFs.
The WAFs, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a constant game of cat and mouse.
Oh, yeah.
Always trying to stay one step ahead.
Stay ahead of the attackers.
Exactly.
We're not just theorizing.
No.
We're going deep with a master's thesis from the Politecnico di Torino.
Okay.
Research, testing, and mitigation solutions for web application firewalls evasion techniques.
Wow. That's a mouthful.
This thesis is going to give us a look into the real tactics hackers use.
The thesis does a great job of laying out the landscape from the basics of web apps to how WAFs work, and of course, how those defenses can be bypassed.
So whether you're a security pro or just curious about how the internet stays safe,
Right.
this one's for you.
For everyone.
Because understanding how these attacks work is the first step to protecting yourself.
Let's start with how web applications actually function.
Okay.
Think of it like a restaurant.
Okay.
You, the customer, place your order.
Okay.
That's the client side.
Got it.
The kitchen cooks it up. That's the server side. And the pantry, where they keep all the ingredients.
Okay.
That's your database.
Okay. So we've got this multi-tiered structure.
Right.
But like any restaurant,
Yeah.
there can be weak points.
Absolutely.
Places where things aren't as secure as they should be.
And those weak points are what attackers look for.
Oh, I see.
Two of the most common vulnerabilities are SQL injection
Okay.
and cross-site scripting, or XSS.
I've heard of those.
Yeah.
But could you break them down?
Sure.
What do they actually look like in practice?
Think of SQL injection as tricking the restaurant into handing over their entire recipe book,
The whole thing.
the database, instead of just your meal.
Yeah, that's not good. What about XSS? What kind of havoc can that cause?
Imagine someone sneaking a note onto another diner's order.
Uh-oh.
Not a nice note.
Oh,
Something nasty that'll mess them up when they read it.
okay.
That note is malicious code.
Got it.
And when someone visits the website, they get infected.
Sounds like we need those digital guard dogs more than ever.
We do.
So where do WAFs come in? How do they actually stop these attacks?
Remember our restaurant analogy?
Yeah.
The WAF is like the bouncer at the door, checking for troublemakers based on a set of rules.
So like they have a list.
Yeah.
Sure.
They're analyzing incoming web requests and blocking anything that looks suspicious.
So it's a first line of defense.
It is.
Stopping bad requests before they can even reach the server.
Exactly.
But just like any security measure,
Sure.
clever attackers are always trying to find ways around it.
Always.
And that's where our deep dive gets really interesting.
Yes.
The thesis mentions a surprising way hackers bypass WAFs
What's that?
by finding a site's real IP address.
Oh, right.
But don't websites hide their server locations behind their domain names?
They try to.
Okay.
But there are tools like Senses and Shodan that are like digital detectives.
Okay.
They scour the internet for clues.
So they're like investigators.
Yeah, kind of like if someone was digging through public records to find that restaurant's real address, even if they had a fake one listed.
Okay, so hackers can sometimes find the actual server location.
Right.
But how does that help them bypass the way?
If they know the real IP address,
Okay.
they can send their attacks directly to the server,
I see.
bypassing the way entirely.
Wow.
It's like sneaking in the back door while the bouncer is watching the front.
So they just go around it.
Exactly.
And it's not just IP addresses.
Right.
They can also use DNS history and even TLS certificates to piece together clues.
Like a puzzle.
TLS certificates, like the things that make sure a website is secure.
Yeah.
What do those have to do with finding a server's IP?
Think of it like connecting the dots.
Okay.
A TLS certificate can be linked to other websites run by the same organization.
I see.
By analyzing these connections, attackers can sometimes uncover the real IP address,
Oh, wow.
even if it's hidden.
So even if a website tries to hide,
Yes,
determined hackers can still find them?
they can.
What's the best way to prevent this kind of bypass?
The most effective way is to configure the server
Okay.
to only accept traffic from the WAF's IP address.
So it's like a whitelist.
Yeah, it's like that restaurant having a super strict doorman who
Right.
only lets in people with the right credentials.
Makes sense. But the thesis also talks about something called payload obfuscation,
Right.
where hackers disguise their attacks.
Yeah.
What does that look like?
Imagine the attacker writing their attack in code
Okay.
so complex that the bouncer,
The way.
the WAF, can't even understand it.
Right.
But the server,
The kitchen in our analogy.
the kitchen in our analogy,
Yeah.
can still decipher it. Okay.
And execute the attack.
So it's like writing a secret message
Yeah.
that only the intended recipient can decode.
Exactly. One way they do this is by exploiting something called Unicode compatibility.
Unicode compatibility.
It's like writing the same message in different languages.
Okay.
The WF might see one version,
Gotcha.
while the server sees a completely different, malicious one.
And I bet there are other encoding tricks up their sleeves.
Oh, absolutely. There's JavaScript obfuscation,
JavaScript obfuscation.
where they make the code so convoluted
Right.
that the WAF gives up trying to analyze it.
Oh, wow.
And then there's base 64 encoding,
Base 64.
another way to turn their malicious code into something that looks harmless
Okay.
until the server decodes it.
So many ways to hide their attacks.
Yeah.
How are WAFs supposed to keep up with all these encoding tricks?
It's a constant arms race.
I bet.
Some WAFs use decoders to try and translate these obfuscated payloads.
Oh, okay.
Or they can implement specific rules to block certain types of encoding. It sounds like WAF developers have their work cut out for them.
They do.
But the thesis also mentions that hackers can target weaknesses in the WAFs themselves.
They can.
Right. What are some examples of that?
One way is to overload the WAF with massive requests.
Massive requests.
Some WAFs are configured to ignore very large requests
Okay.
to improve performance. It's like the bouncer getting overwhelmed by a huge crowd and just letting everyone through.
So the attackers just blend in with a flood of data.
Yeah.
Sneaky. Does that actually work in the real world?
It does. In
Oh,
fact,
what's it?
the thesis mentions a case study where a security team successfully bypassed an Akamai WAF
No way.
using this technique during a penetration test.
Wow, so it's not just theoretical.
No.
These attacks really happen.
All the time.
And of course, like any software, WAFs can have bugs.
Of course.
Hackers are always looking for those vulnerabilities and
Always.
exploiting them to their advantage.
Exactly.
That's why keeping your software up to date is so crucial. Those security patches often fix newly discovered vulnerabilities.
They do.
Okay, so we've covered finding the server's IP,
Right.
sneaky encoding,
Yep.
and exploiting weaknesses in the WAF itself.
Right.
Anything else we should be wary of?
There's one more category that's particularly challenging for WAFs.
Which
is business logic flaws.
business logic.
Yeah.
That sounds less like hacking and more like accounting.
It's about understanding how a web application is designed to work and finding loopholes in the rules.
I see.
WAFs are good at spotting suspicious patterns,
Right.
but they can struggle with these more nuanced attacks.
Can you give me a concrete example of a business logic flaw?
The thesis uses the example of the WASP use shell.
Do shell.
It's a deliberately vulnerable web application designed for security training.
Okay.
Typically, when you register on a site, you're assigned a basic user role.
Right. So what's the business logic flaw here?
An attacker can manipulate the registration request to become an admin user
Flaw.
without triggering any WAF rules.
Now that is sneaky. So if WFs can't always catch these business logic attacks,
Right.
what's the solution?
That's a great question, and it leads us to some very interesting possibilities.
Okay.
But I think we should save that for part 2 of our deep dive.
Okay. Sounds good. It's kind of mind-blowing that hackers can be so creative
Yeah.
in finding ways to bypass security measures.
What's interesting is that even with all these complex techniques,
Right.
many attacks still rely on exploiting known vulnerabilities.
So it's not always about some super secret hacking knowledge.
Right.
Sometimes it's just finding that one weak spot.
Exactly.
And that's why keeping up with security best practices,
Yep.
like updating your software and using strong passwords, is so important.
Very important.
It's a good reminder that security is an ongoing process.
It is.
Before we dig deeper into solutions,
Right.
you mentioned that business logic flaws are a tough nut to crack
Yeah, they are.
for traditional WAFs.
They really are.
What makes these flaws so challenging to address?
Traditional WAFs excel at filtering out known attack patterns,
Right.
but they struggle when it comes to understanding the intent behind an action.
So a WAF might see a request
Yeah.
that looks harmless on the surface,
Right.
but a human would recognize it as potentially malicious.
Precisely. Think about the juice shop example, where an attacker can manipulate the registration process to gain admin privileges.
Okay.
The request itself might not look suspicious to a WAF,
Right.
but a human would immediately recognize that something's off.
Right, because it's not about the specific code.
Yeah.
It's about what that code is trying to achieve.
The intent.
So how do we move beyond these limitations?
Well,
Is it time for a completely different approach to web security?
I believe so.
Really?
And this is where artificial intelligence has the potential to revolutionize the way we protect our applications.
Okay. AI.
Yeah,
It's a buzzword we hear everywhere.
it is.
But how can it actually help with web security?
Imagine a WAF
Okay.
that can learn from past attacks.
Adapt to new threats.
Okay.
And even anticipate potential vulnerabilities before they're exploited.
Wow.
That's the power of AI.
That sounds incredible.
It is.
A self-learning security system that can outsmart even the most cunning hackers.
Right?
But is that even realistic?
It's becoming more realistic every day.
You think so?
We're already seeing AI-powered solutions that can analyze user behavior,
Okay.
detect anomalies, and identify malicious intent hidden within seemingly normal actions.
So instead of relying on predefined rules,
Right.
these AI systems can actually understand what's normal for a particular website
Yeah.
and flag anything that deviates from that baseline.
Exactly.
So it learns what's normal
It does.
and then flags things that aren't normal.
Think of it like a security camera that can not only record what's happening,
Okay.
but also understand the context and alert you if someone is behaving suspiciously.
That makes sense, but wouldn't that require a huge amount of data and processing power?
It does.
Yeah. But advancements in cloud computing and machine learning algorithms
Right.
are making it increasingly feasible to implement these complex systems.
Okay, let's say we have this incredibly smart AI-powered WAF in place.
Okay.
How would it actually protect us from those business logic flaws
Okay.
that traditional WAFs miss?
Let's go back to that juice shop example.
Okay.
An AI-powered WAF could analyze the typical registration process and identify that suddenly creating an admin user out of thin air is highly unusual.
Okay.
So even though the request itself might not contain any obvious malicious code,
Right.
the AI would flag it as a potential attack because it understands the context.
Exactly. It's not just about what the code looks like.
Right.
It's about understanding the intent behind the action.
That's what AI can do.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
It's like having a security guard who can read minds
Right.
and anticipate what a hacker might try to do next.
Yeah.
But AI is constantly learning and evolving, right?
Yeah, it is.
So it's not just a one-time fix, but rather an ongoing process of improvement.
You got it.
AI-powered security systems need to be constantly learning and adapting as new threats emerge.
Yes,
And this is where the human element remains crucial.
it is.
So it's not about replacing human experts with robots,
No,
but rather about giving security professionals better tools to do their jobs.
that's the key.
Okay.
We need skilled professionals to train these AI systems,
Oh, yeah.
interpret the data they generate,
Mm-hmm.
and make informed decisions about how to best protect our digital assets.
So AI can handle the heavy lifting,
Yes,
analyzing vast amounts of data, and identifying patterns that humans might miss.
exactly.
But humans are still needed to make those critical decisions.
Exactly.
AI can help us automate tedious tasks
Right, yeah?
and free up security professionals to focus on the more strategic aspects of security,
Yeah,
like proactive risk mitigation and developing new defense strategies.
that's right.
This all sounds very promising for the future of web security.
It is.
But what does it mean for the average person
Right.
who may not be a tech expert?
It means we're moving towards a more intelligent and adaptable security landscape.
So that's good.
It is.
But it also means that staying informed about the latest threats and best practices is more important than ever.
Right.
It's reassuring to know that AI might be the key
Yeah,
to tackling these increasingly complex attacks.
it could be.
But while we wait for those super smart WAFs to become mainstream,
Right.
what can we do right now to protect ourselves?
So,
Are there any practical steps we can take?
absolutely. Awareness is your first and best line of defense.
Okay.
The more you understand about the types of attacks out there,
Right.
the better equipped you'll be to spot potential risks and protect yourself.
So knowledge really is power in this case.
Without a doubt.
Okay.
And luckily, there are tons of great resources out there to help you learn about web security.
Like what?
The OWASP website, for example, is a goldmine of information.
What's that?
They even have a list of the top 10 most common web vulnerabilities.
Oh, yeah. The OSP Top 10.
Yes!
I've heard of that.
It's a great resource.
It's definitely moving up my reading list after this.
It's a fantastic place to start.
Okay.
And if you're running a website or web application, make sure you're following security best practices.
Like what?
Keeping your software updated,
Okay.
using strong passwords, and enabling multi-factor authentication are all crucial.
Those are all great tips, and they sound pretty straightforward to implement.
They are.
It's almost like basic hygiene, like washing your hands to prevent the spread of germs.
I like that analogy. Just like good hygiene can prevent most illnesses,
Right.
following security best practices can significantly reduce your risk of getting hacked.
So it's not just about fancy AI systems
Yes.
or complex technical solutions.
Right.
It's also about taking personal responsibility for our own security.
Exactly.
We can't just rely on technology to protect us.
Yeah.
We need to be proactive and informed. That's empowering to know that we have some control over our own security.
Is.
But let's be real. Some of these hacking techniques sound pretty advanced.
Yeah.
Is it even possible for the average person to stay ahead of the curve?
It might seem daunting,
Yeah.
but remember that even the most sophisticated attacks often exploit basic vulnerabilities.
Right.
Staying informed and following best practices can make a world of difference.
So we don't need to become expert hackers ourselves to protect our data.
Not at all. There are plenty of resources and tools available to help you secure your online presence.
Okay.
And the more people who take security seriously, the stronger our collective defenses will be.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
It's like a neighborhood watch for the internet.
Exactly.
Everyone working together to keep each other safe.
I love that. And that's why I'm such a big believer in education and awareness.
Yeah.
The more we understand about the threats we face,
Right.
the better equipped we'll be to defend ourselves.
Well said. This deep dive has been eye-opening. We went from feeling vulnerable to feeling empowered,
That's
knowing there are steps we can take to protect ourselves.
Exactly.
Okay, before we wrap up, one final question.
Yeah.
If traditional WRFs can't stop all attacks,
Right.
and AI is still emerging,
Yeah.
what does the future hold?
So,
What would a truly intelligent, adaptable web security system look like?
that is a fantastic question and
Yeah.
one that I think we'll be exploring for years to come.
Definitely.
It's exciting to be on the cusp of a new era in web security.
Yeah.
And the possibilities are truly endless.
Very cool.
So stay curious, keep learning,
Okay.
and join us next time for another deep dive into a fascinating topic.